Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Thiago. This is my 10th DevOps Days Amsterdam, so it is weird from that time long ago coming here, then organizing it for a couple of years, and now being a speaker. It's always fun to be around. And I'm here to talk with you all a little bit about AI. So you're saying, oh my God, no, not AI again. It's not on that angle. It's about how we leverage AI, how does that affect our job. And I'm a team topologies advocate. I like that. I do research in other topics. I work for AWS. This is not an AWS talk. But let's get started, if this works. Yes. Who here heard about Conway's law at some point? I assume almost everyone. Or if you didn't hear about it, it's mainly this, published in a paper that then became famous on the book, The Mythical Man Month, that was tagged on it. And this is where things started. And that mainly says, if you have an organization that is designing a system, the structure of it is actually going to be a copy of the communication patterns that happen on it. It goes beyond in some other aspects. However, there was a guy like 10 years ago that made some expansions to Conway. So on my title, it says breaking Conway's third law. And nobody called me bullshit on this. But I wanted to clear it out. There is no Conway's third law. I just wanted to put it out there to tell you and show how much people listen to experts on stage accepting things out of the blue. Because this is an important topic when you talk about AI. Because when we chat with these LLMs nowadays, the perfect ones that we have and other ones, sometimes they feel like human white male Reddit commenters. But very, very, very good in putting words that sound like reality and you take it on. So going back to it, Amundsen made some expansion to Conway's law. And he came up with this. There's never enough time to do something right, but there is always enough time to do it over. And this touches an important aspect when we're building software, when we're doing software, that one of the most interesting constraints that we have is time. No one is going to argue against time. The other part is where it says it's not just a copy, it's an isomorphism. And isomorphisms come from the mathematical part of it, but it mainly says that it's like a direct copy of the communication patterns. It's going to be a direct copy there. So he just used a more mathematical term to say what Conway was saying. And then it moved on to okay. This conclusion that is related to time. The structures of large systems tend to disintegrate during development. And that is connected to time, isomorphism, and all of it. Because what happens is, when you start building a large thing, putting a lot of people into context, you have kickoffs, you write things into Confluence or whatever, you do things to align people along. And during that time, things get aligned and go well. But let's say that Tim is the lead developer of something. He put everything into Confluence. He does architectural decision records, RFCs, all of it. Everything goes well. There is a kickoff. Everyone gets together. Team gets a better offer at some other place because in tech we have this weird feeling that people that are working in the company get 5% yearly increase, but if you hire someone externally, you can give them a 20% increase, right? So team gets a 20% increase at another place, leaves the company. A little bit of that knowledge starts to disintegrate because team is not there anymore. Other people goes into it. The Confluence page is not that updated. The reference architecture is very different from reality. So within time, things start to disintegrate because our context changes. So what Amundsen is putting it here is something that is really, really interesting because, yes, let's say you at your place. Who here is using any AI tool to do their job? I'm curious on the ones that are not using it. So you're not using AI at all at your job?
I'm a writer. I refuse.
Nice, nice. What about you, Tim?
I use Stack Overflow. I'm old school.
Use Stack Overflow? Yeah. Okay, so you are the 0.1% on the graph there that's still using Stack Overflow.
Exactly.
Okay. But a lot of people are using AI for these cases in our industry nowadays. An AI assistant, when you're doing a meeting with whatever tool you have, it's getting the transcription, it's summarizing, it's giving you instructions, it's going through there. Used for document generation, used for code review, for writing tests, for many other things. And depending on the situation you are, this is getting more and more. However, if you think with me this through, there is an impact of that into the world, because before you were using these tools, you were creating things and co-creating with other users, summarizing and having specific cognitive tasks that were intrinsic, that were part of your day-to-day job. You were creating content, you were trying to summarize content, you were trying to absorb content and move on. However, nowadays, with a meeting transcript, with the discussions, with all of it, some people expect a tendency that, for example, junior developers, new joiners, will ask internal AI tools before actually go and talk to people. You actually go into the point that when you give this task, even if you are an expert, let's say I'm really good at Terraform, and I get into a new company, I'm a consultant or something, I see some Terraform code. Some people nowadays, instead of just like reading the entire code, they put an assistant to it if the company is actually using to explain how the repo structure, all of it. And then when you start to do new things into it, you go into this new step that you are not just creating and using the regular like cognitive tasks that you were using before, you're actually stepping out from the creation aspect to it to the verification aspect of it. You are curating a lot more than you used to curate before. And that is an interesting perspective, because as someone that is really, really interested in, and I hate to say it like this without explaining properly, like social-technical systems, the interaction between technology and people, and how those things go together, we start to move towards a place where we are not like executing tasks how we used before. We are going into a place that we are guiding, stewarding. So important characteristics that were before expected from a manager or for a tech lead, all of it, are now being used by everyone. Because, like I said, this Reddit user behind the scene, the one that you have, that you can always ask stuff, and it can spit out something that looks reasonably right, and sometimes right, sometimes wrong. You now don't have just one, you have a battalion of it. It's infinite, it doesn't get tired, well, unless it goes down, but you have that perspective that you now have a stewardship. And now with all the buzzwords around agentic AI and frameworks and all of it, you can have actually workflows. So how does that change the way that we build software, and how does that change the way that we communicate, connect, and move towards stuff? What kind of additions do we need to add to this? So an import angle to this is this figure. Has anyone seen something similar to this? Few? Okay. So who here heard about team topologies before? Okay, few. I think the majority of people here. This is the classic example that Matthew Skelton and Emmanuel Pais put into the book, where they explain team types, interaction types, and things related to team topologies. Team topologies is not a Spotify model like, it's not a way for you to structure your teams or nothing like that. It is a language. It is a way for you to understand how does teams work, how do they interact, with one really interesting perspective, that is, we want to reduce the cognitive load of people. Meaning, if I want to put something into production that is going to help a customer, I don't want to be attached to how do I deploy this on AWS, how do I test it, how do I do this, how do I do that, all of the things that are surrounding. I want it to be taken away as much as possible so I can focus on what adds value. That's the cognitive load part that we want to diminish and align you so you have what we call fast flow, the way to go from ideation to the customer and having that feedback loop as fast as possible. And this is what DevOps stands for in some sense. However, the added value here is the cognitive load. And for the team types, we have stream-aligned teams. Before, can we call it like product teams, feature teams, whatever you want to do it. We have platform teams that are actually building the surrounding blocks that let you, from the stream-aligned team, actually do the CI/CD, do your tests, all of it. We have enabling teams that are going to interact with the teams in a specific point of time to tell you, this is how you use this new test framework, this is how you do this is how you do that, to enable you. And you have complicated subsystem teams that are more like short-lived teams that are working in a specific thing. Like, we want to build a new machine learning model for risk analysis, and we're going to create an API that the platform team is going to maintain and that the stream-aligned team is going to take it on. But one important aspect of this was we want to reduce team cognitive load. And a consequence of that was we don't want you to spend too much time over-communicating. You need to have the right amount of information, but not all the information, because you want to reduce your cognitive load. However, how does it stand when we start to put chatbots, LLMs, and AI agents into it? You are talking to this other part of doing your day-to-day work that actually has trillions of texts and documents and all of it around, and might add some noise, some errors, and some things with all the knowledge in the world there. It also tries to follow some patterns and some things. So how does it stand for you now? Are we actually making your life easy to do the work that it's supposed to do? Also, there was a, oh, I think there's something.
That was a fast ball.
Something broke?
It might be the clicker.
Yeah, so I'll remove the clicker from this. It's not a Windows, so. Let's see, is it appearing again? No, no. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Ah, there we go. Yay. So, I was here, right?
Yes.
On this, and I'll change here to the Cosmio one. Because one important thing here is, this is a conclusion from a paper from this year that says that you use more Gen AI, you can harm your critical engagements. There is something also similar from an even more recent paper from 9 days ago. Of course, this one, the cognitive depth one. where it introduced this concept of cognitive depth and also says that the more you use Gen AI, the more cognitive depth you get into it. And you're like, fantastic, I'm going to use this. It's probably going to be fed up into the new version of Claude, ChatGPT or something, and I'll be able to quote. I can put into Perplexity. I can annex the PDF, all of it. However, please be mindful with context-dependent generalizations. Because those two papers that I shared, what I actually did there, if you took a picture, is I switched the source of the quote. It's a mistake, right? Everyone can make these mistakes. However, this is even more, apparently, when you use LLMs and you try to do this kind of stuff. Because those two papers are fantastic. One is from the MIT, the other one is from Microsoft Research. However, science, when we're talking about cognition, people and people doing work, it's really, really hard to get scientific and generalize. For example, the paper that says that cognitive depth arises, it's talking about people, a lot of males in 58 sample between 18 to 39 years old, writing essays. Okay? I do research at the Antwerp University also. When I do research over there, design is really, really important for us when we do the design of the experiment. These people writing these essays, they had a control group, another group, all of it, but were the topic that they're writing something that they already knew beforehand or not? Were they AI literate, like they knew how to write prompts? Yes or no? How are you assessing this kind of stuff can affect a lot of things. So be careful when you do this context generalization from things and try to say like we shouldn't use AI or we should use AI because I saw this paper, because this is what you get on LinkedIn clickbait all the time. There is the doom area and the AI is going to replace the developer side. So be mindful of it. But going back to it, the research, the Microsoft one, actually points out that we can have a problem with the critical thinking. And I share that I think that this way we might be adding more cognitive load to other stuff. But imagine that if it's not just the person on that team that is actually building a feature like writing the front end, but everyone starts to use LLMs. One uses Claude, the other uses ChatGPT, all of it. Everyone is connected to human knowledge, as you can say. How does that plays into the cognitive load part? I think, and this is me, that there is a redistribution of the cognitive load. Some things get easier, some things get harder, because there are new tasks arising and new skills that are going to appear. And this has a problem with the critical thinking part, that the more you use, depending on your starting stage, if you were an expert on that topic and you're using it as a sparring partner versus I'm going to get everything that comes out of it, that is really, really, really convincing as my new learning experience. Some people risk becoming not that smart in some tasks, depending on how they do this. And if they do that in that specific way, what is happening? Well, we need to think about how we become not just executors, but stewards of tasks if you're deciding to use these agents or these LLMs. We need to think about to not ensure that we create this organizational depth, that we do not do this. There are plenty of people that are already betting and like ensuring that their job in the future are going to be fixing AI-created code, right? There are some people that are not skeptical about it. There are some people that think that we are going to move towards something even more abstract on top, that we're going to be able to write code just with plain English, vibe coding in some sense. We all know it's not production ready. If you vibe code your bank into production, I know that I'm not going to put money on it, but there are some things that you can do with it. However, this creates some boundary conflicts because team topologists came to divide the teams in a way that you have clear interactions and clear boundaries, a very domain-driven design aspect of it. That's why you use event storming and like all of it. Splitting that domain becomes more convoluted because if you're using an internal LLM to share things inside and it's getting everyone's context, how does it apply only to you? Which other things it's getting? Let's say that you are in a huge organization. You have your code quality parts, you have your way of doing code, you have your tests, all of it. And then there is another team on the org that has a different perspective into how to build code. But everything is feeding to the LLM and you go into it. There are ways around that. You can put some docs into your LLM to say, just do it like this or that. However, these boundaries start to get a little bit more blurry because of this new agent that has a bigger context than you have. And does this create some extra noise? We have examples of people being able to access, for example, salary of other people in the company because the LLM was trained into the overall data that they had on it. Excellent, right? If there was not a GDPR problem? Yeah. Excellent, maybe, to be transparent. However, there are some legal things to it. So are we going to have to start to think of new interaction modes? Is the LLM or the chat or the agent a new team, new member? Or how we interact with it? How do we define on it? Is this going to create new boundaries for the teams? Because again, now, the platform team might have a very, very, very specific way on how to write HSCL and like do the Terraform code, like all of it. But if you go and you talk to ChatGPT or whatever, the format, the way, the structure of the code might be not according to your organization. So how does this boundary appear? And I think we are coming with new types of tasks. Like, it's not just doing what we're supposed to do the way that we are used to. We're going to have to think of new ways that we do work. And we're going to have to think of ways to verify more. Like, that's going to be an important part. Now, curation and verification might become something closer to a first-class type of task that we do. And we're going to have to work a lot on the literacy part of it. Literacy, in a sense, the same way that the data literacy part. That is, how do we do this? How do we move on with it? How do I use these LLMs? What are the things? Is this actually intelligent? How does it work? All of this kind of stuff. So to address these challenges, these new perspectives, in the last 2.5 years or something, I have been working in several companies on how to give like recommendations to it. And one of the most important one that a lot of the old school people are going to say like, wow, information flows and data flows and information architecture, is that important? Yes, more than ever. Knowing your information flow in your organization is going to be even more crucial now than it was before. So please spend some time to map your information flow. If you are in a startup and you want to use Mongo, Dynamo, or whatever because you don't want to think about your data structure in the physical sense, think of the conceptual level, how the entities relate to each other, what are the domains that you are using, define the language that you want to do, and map it in a way that is important for your business. Like I mentioned, verification is going to be a first-class citizen. Provide AI literacy trainings, and more important than that, create some AI-free time for critical thinking. Put your team together in a place where you want to discuss an architecture or something that is according to you, because, and now going to the architecture and the technical part, LLMs can create technically sound, fantastic architectures for you and solutions for you. But that doesn't matter if the business context and the social technical context is not there. Like, it's going to propose you to use a Lambda with API gateway and event bridge and all of that, but your team has been like going towards Kubernetes for the last 1 year, doesn't know anything about that, so why? Why make that change? Just because serverless is better? That's not the way that you should take decisions. The social construct is much more important than the technical solution. So these are my recommendations and the way for me to ramp up, because I think that this is a huge opportunity or challenge, if you want to say, because we don't know how to leverage these kind of things. We are still struggling on how to integrate this into it. There's a lot of fear-mongering on one side, and there's a lot of optimism on the other. And I think, as usual, a middle way is the best way forward. So, again, Conway's law has guided us for some time. Team topologies is getting traction, it's getting bigger, people are thinking about it. However, recognize that AI is a new construct and that people are going to use it. And you should consider that when you are making decisions. I think that's the way forward. And how does this relate? What are the systems? And how things are becoming more complex now because we don't understand it yet. So I hope that that was helpful. And if you have any questions or any of it, please let me know, and thank you.